sunshine I gotta love, and I know that it's all mine.
Hi there, my name is Hillary. Welcome back to another tutorial for architecture design students. So this one's going to be all about Illustrator. I know it's not like a Revit tutorial series, but I'm going to show you how to use your Revit 3D model or Rhino 3D model, bring it into Illustrator to make 2D drawings. So if we start with our Revit 3D model that is already made, I'm going to go to the sheets, right click, click new sheet. I just do this to plot my drawings on so they export as 2D drawings. I'm going to take my 3D view and plop it right on there. Now I'm going to say File, Export CAD, DWG. So now I can open up a blank Rhino file. I'm going to double click into the top view, File, Import, and my exports will be here. I'm going to open this one up. Make sure the units match what you were working in the other program. And it's really big, so I'm going to zoom out, and there it is. You can see that it comes in one block, and it does maintain the layers based on how it was modeled in Revit. So we have like floor pattern, roof, wall, etc. I usually explode this, and now I can click on each individual line. So now that I have this exploded, you might need to explode a few more times if there are other objects. But now you can basically just clean this up by deleting certain elements like these hatches, these extra lines and patterns. I would also then create a few new layers that will be your line weights. And for an axo, I like to have an outline around it, so I'm going to add that as well. So now I can just click on these different types of lines and add them to the assigned layer. And a really good thing about doing this in Rhino is it's super easy to just draw new lines. Like I like to add an outline, so it's super easy to just draw this. So now that we have this line weighted to whatever extent you want, now we can export this at a scale, because this right now is 1:1. So I'm going to highlight this and I'm going to type in export. And we're going to change this file type to be Adobe Illustrator. Now we can click save, and we actually have the scale pop up right here. So what I like to do is just keep these the same, and then I can type this in. So I know that this exported drawing is going to be at the scale 1:100. Okay. I'm going to quickly go back and show you how to do the same thing in Rhino if you have your 3D model in Rhino. So you're going to go to your perspective view. You're going to say set view. This is for an axo, isometric, and then pick your angle. Now you're going to highlight it and say make 2D. You can adjust these settings here depending on what you want to show. And now you have a 2D drawing. So you're going to go back to your top view, and now you can see the line drawing that you have just created. So now we can do the exact same thing and type export, and again go through the same process to export it as an Illustrator, say save, and select the scale. So now when we open the Illustrator file, it's going to be at the exact same scale that we selected, and the layers that we created are going to be maintained. So now let's go over some of the interface of Adobe Illustrator. So on the right here, you have your properties and your layers. This is really important, and the layers, like in Photoshop, appear in the order. So you usually want to have your darkest line weight at the top and the lightest at the bottom. So the properties will display the information about whatever you are clicking on. So if we click on a line, it will show you the line weight and the information about it. If for whatever reason your properties don't show up right away, you can just click on Windows and then Properties, and it will show up. There you go. So when you first open Adobe Illustrator, it's going to look like this. I can scroll in and out by holding down Alt on my keyboard and using the scroll wheel. And I can pan up and down by just using the scroll wheel. If you do zoom out, you're going to see that there's like this box. So this is like the working space. You can't move anything outside of that. You'll get an error. The white thing in the middle is your artboard, which is basically like the piece of paper that you're working on. If you want to change the artboard, it's this little icon right here. That brings that to you, and then you can like push and pull on it like this. And the size of the artboard is written right here, so we can always adjust it like this to get the exact dimensions. So your toolbar is on the left here automatically. This is the selection tool, so you click on stuff and it moves around really easily. This tool I usually use to select just points, and then you can pull on them like that. This is the rectangle tool, so you can do that. If you right click, you get other tools. The line segment is really useful. This is your brush, does what you expect. If you right click, you have a pencil tool, which is like that. Your text, if you right click on it, you can have this fun line. So your text can go on like a fun angle. This is the eraser tool. If you right click, you get the scissors as well. So the eraser tool is more organic like this. And the scissors tool will like break your line segments. And you have to click exactly on the line or you will get this error. Another tool that's super useful is the eyedropper tool. It does the same thing in Photoshop. So you can click on this and then click on a color and it will take that color and make it usable right here. So this area down here is also really useful. This is your fill color and this is your stroke color. So if I draw a box, automatically there's no fill and there is a solid black line. We can use this arrow to quickly switch that. Or if we double click on this, we can have the colors pop up and you can do that. You can also have both, just double click on this as well and you can pull up like another color. So now we have the outline that's that color and the fill that's that color. This is consistent throughout any of the tools that you use. You can draw lines with this tool, the pen tool. You get straight segments. I click escape to get out of that and then click on this mouse tool to be able to select it. Or you can use this curve tool and that does almost the same thing, but with curves like that. If you have already drawn a curve like this and you want to adjust it, you click on this and you can see the points come up and then you can highlight one and then just move that individual curve and that will change. One thing that's a little bit different about Illustrator is when you hold Shift, you can select multiple things at the same time, but instead of clicking Control or Alt to unselect, you keep holding Shift. It's kind of annoying, but it is what it is. Now going over to the properties panel, I usually only use the appearance panel here. So this is just telling us about the appearance of the thing that we're clicking on. So we can adjust the line weights here. As you see, they get thinner and thicker. Also on the layers tab, this is the button for creating a new layer. When you select an object, it will highlight right here. So you can just drag and drop that little square onto the next layer and it will move it. You can select all of the items on that layer by clicking this button. Everything is highlighted and then you can drag and drop it and it moves all of those things onto that one layer. This is particularly useful when you are exporting something from Rhino where you haven't organized the layers, but you might have like colors by each element. So you can say select same appearance or stroke color or fill color. It will select all of those that have the same color and then you can drag them onto the one layer. Within the layer panel, you can also obviously lock and turn on and off layers just like you would in other Adobe software. So if I'm going to start line weighting this drawing, I'm going to highlight it like this. I'm going to go over here and click black to make all of the lines black. And now I'm going to go to my properties and adjust the line weights for each layer. I have the hatch on its own layer. I'm going to make this super light. Now I'm going to go to my light layer, also make it a fine line weight, and my dark layer, and I'm going to make my outline nice and dark. So now if I wanted an exploded axo and I wanted a dotted line, I would make a new layer. You don't have to do this. I usually lock all the ones that I'm done with. And I'm going to call this layer dotted. Now I can draw my new line segments on here. I'm going to hold shift as I'm drawing to make sure that they're straight. I'm going to click escape a couple times to get out of that. And I'm going to click on the selection tool to allow me to click on this. I'm going to go to the properties, going to make it a thinner line weight. And now I want to make this a dotted line. I'm going to click on stroke. And now this is where I get the dotted line information. So you can adjust these corners. This is just what it looks like at the corner and the cap. These are usually too detailed to even notice, so I just skip that. And then I'm going to check this dashed line. Now automatically it's going to say 12. If you move your mouse off of that, you can see that that is the dash for 12. I usually find that that's too big of a dash for my liking, so I can change this to be something smaller. And click enter and it'll update. You can also play around with the gaps if you want to make it irregular. Also, just like in a lot of software, if you highlight something and you hold Alt, it will duplicate it. I can also annotate my drawing using the text tool. It is almost the same as every other Adobe product. You click and you type. You can adjust the types of font here, regular. Oh, one thing that I love about Illustrator is that I can really adjust what the font looks like. So obviously I can adjust the size, but then I can also adjust the spacing. One thing that I love to do is adjust the spacing between each letter. I think that that's really fun. Now I'm going to explain to you how to create hatches. So I usually create a new layer and lock all my other ones so I'm not accidentally clicking on it. And I usually like to have my hatches below the lines, but that is to your preference. So to create a hatch, we first need to create a shape. So I'm going to use the pen tool or the curvature tool to create that shape. So now we have our closed shape. And if we were to swap this, we would see that it is filling in successfully in all the places that we want it to. Now I'm going to click on properties, and instead of having a solid fill, I'm going to make this a hatch. So I'm going to click on this. And now this part is so not intuitive. I hate how hard this is to find, but you're going to hover over this swatch library menu and click on the little arrow. Now you're going to go to patterns, basic graphics, and then basic graphic textures. This is going to pull up this tiny little menu that is so hard to read. And this is most of the textures that I usually like to work with. So I'll just show you some of them here. So once you pick a texture hatch that you like, we can adjust it. So in this case, I think I want this hatch to be lighter. Okay, easy. I can just adjust this opacity, but I also want it to be, let's say, scaled up a little bit and rotated. So if I right click, I can go to transform, and I have these tools here. Move, rotate, reflect, scale, shear. So I'm going to say rotate. And now the important thing is that you unclick the transform objects, which if you see, that will transform the whole shape. We only want to transform the pattern here. Okay, now we can do the exact same thing to scale it up. Transform, scale, and once again, make sure that transform objects is unclicked, and we can scale this up. Click OK. So that's how you create a hatch based on the graphic textures that Illustrator has. So in order to change the color of the hatch, we first need to make this editable. So right now I cannot select on each of the individual pieces that make up this hatch. So I'm going to say Object, Expand. Okay. Now we have turned this hatch into vectors that are clickable, but we need to be on the selection tool in order to select each of them. I'm going to hover over one, and now I'm selecting one of those pieces. Now I'm going to go select same appearance, and I've clicked all of the pieces that are involved in that whole hatch. So now you can see that the stroke has a color associated with it, so I can double click and change that color. Now, if I go back to here and I select off of this, it is updated with that color. I can also use the exact same workflow to adjust the line weight of that shape. So now I'm going to show you a bunch of resources that you can use to download scale figures for your drawings. So this one is called Non-Scandinavian. This one is called Pimp My Drawing. You have the ability to download the AI, the Illustrator file, or the CAD file, which you could add directly into your Rhino file or your CAD file. And Vector Vault, which is a really great website. Again, you can download the Illustrator file or the CAD file. The really great thing about Vector Vault is that it provides scale figures that are diverse. So we have women in head coverings sitting, lesbian families, all these kinds of people. And just a tip for you, because it can be kind of annoying when you have to download every single individual scale figure, I've created a Rhino file with a whole bunch of my downloaded scale figures, different styles, different kinds, including like cars, trees, vegetation, animals. I find that this just helps me keep organized instead of having to download individual people for every project. So I can open a scale figure and just really simply copy and paste it into my file, and there we go. One thing that I really like about the Vector Vault and the Pimp My Drawing is they're done in a similar style. So using both of those websites, the scale figures kind of fit in, and you can adjust this outline to be thicker, which I sometimes like. And if your scale figures are see-through like this, the helpful thing about downloading ones that have an outline is you can give them a white fill. So now they are in front. So the last thing I want to share with you is just some information about exporting. So unlike Photoshop, where you can just go File, Save As, and it gives you the different file types, for this you want to go File, Export, Export As, and this is where you get the big drop-down list. Just to give you some quick examples of the different file types, JPEG is rasterized, so it's flat like a photo. Similarly, a TIFF is also rasterized. I prefer to use TIFFs. They make the line weights really beautiful and not too chunky. This is usually what I use when printing my drawings, although TIFFs are heavier and some programs don't let you send TIFFs back and forth, whereas JPEGs are accepted everywhere. PNGs are similar, but you can have like a transparent background. They're also widely accepted, like on Figma. I find that PNGs are preferred. And then lastly, if you want to export as a PDF, which I do not recommend when you're line weighting because it doesn't work very well when you zoom in and out. Your line weights are going to get really ugly when you zoom too far out. But if you want to export as a PDF, you have to go print as a PDF, or you can simply file, save as a PDF. So that's how you export. I just want to give you a few tips on how this compares to other Adobe products. So Adobe Illustrator is really great for line weighting specifically and for dealing with vectors, which are lines that are editable. But if there's too many lines, your files will be too slow to use. So when creating final drawings, what I usually do is export each individual drawing as a TIFF and then have a separate Adobe Illustrator file to stick all of my drawings onto the panels to print. So if you're creating a document with lots of pages, like a portfolio or a thesis, you're going to want to use InDesign because it is meant for compiling images onto multiple pages, whereas Illustrator will have a hard time with that. And you have the added benefit of using the master spread, which allows you to format all of your pages really similarly. So that's the end of my super quick Illustrator tutorial. I hope this helped. Thank you.
For the sunshine, I gotta love, and I know that it's all mine. Oh.